Hello, I am Xarkun and this is World of Warships Legends. Today we're going to take a look at the second wave of Transformer commanders, and I'll give you my recommendations on which ones I would buy. Of course, everybody's different, so you can decide for yourself. As with the first wave, you can find these Transformers in the store, and you can buy them individually for 5,000 doubloons each. You could also buy the crates for 750 doubloons, which have a chance to drop the Transformers commanders, but if you actually want one of these, I wouldn't recommend buying the crates. Instead, I'd say just get the 5,000 doubloons and buy them outright. There are, of course, packages as well, which give you the commander as well as a skin for a particular ship, and we'll look at the skins in my port as well. And then, of course, you have the gigantic bundles that cost an arm and a leg if you want to go that route. As for the commanders themselves, let's start in the UK, because the first commander is a cruiser commander for British cruisers. He is Hot Rod, and his base trait, Cognizant, reduces the reload time for the radar consumable, which may be kind of useful, although I don't think this is a super useful base trait that I would be incorporating into any of my builds. And whenever I'm looking at these guys personally, I want to look at the base trait first. I want to see, does this base trait look good enough to apply to other builds? And if it does, then I think that's a valuable commander. If it doesn't, then it doesn't mean the commander isn't valuable. It just means his value is not going to extend outside of the ship that I put him on. So right off the bat, Hot Rod's base trait, don't think is particularly useful. Other than that, he's one of your sort of agile, maneuverability, defensive cruiser commanders with all the requisite skills. His unique skill, Prescience, hopefully I'm not pronouncing that incorrectly, reduces your air detectability range and radar. So these two skills, the Prescience skill and the Cognizant skill, synergize with each other. And really, as far as British cruisers go, this would only be useful for the Albemarle and the Edinburgh. And, maybe I would run him on one of those ships just for this skill. Otherwise, I think Tenant is a fine commander, so I wouldn't rate this one too highly. Next, we're moving on to Germany, where we get an aircraft carrier commander, Starscream, whose base trait increases aircraft cruise speed. Now, if you are an aircraft carrier player, then this might actually be a somewhat useful base trait, and it might be something you want to spec into your aircraft carrier builds. I don't know. As for the rest of his skills, well, they're basically your typical aircraft carrier skills, except for Inspired Return, which increases aircraft return speed at rank 10 by 10%, so it goes even higher than that. And that actually, I think, is a pretty useful skill that would be pretty good on the German aircraft carriers should you choose to buy this one. Although, since there are so few aircraft carriers in the game, I don't know. The value of this base trait, not very high right now, but as more carriers get added into the game, well, then the value of this skill might increase. But if I were deciding how to spend my doubloons, this is probably not going to be my first pick. Then, after that, we go to France, where we get another battleship commander. Base trait on this, Quick Charge, reduces the enhanced secondary targeting consumables reload time by a small percentage. Honestly, I don't think this is all that worth it unless you're really into secondary builds. The problem is, though, with secondary builds, now we have so many inspirations. Hipper, Haruna, Geisler, some other ones. Basically, I think for, at least in my mind, the inspirations you want to use for secondary builds are ones that increase the range of the secondaries, which means, to me at least, Hipper and Haruna are the two top dogs, And this one, I can't see ever putting this as an inspiration on a battleship commander for a secondary build. I'd go with Hipper or Haruna instead. As for his skills, he's just sort of your basic brawling battleship commander, I suppose. And then his unique skill, Sharpshooter, increases the shell grouping of your main battery guns while the enhanced secondary targeting consumable is active. So that's interesting. I guess if you pop that consumable, then your main battery guns actually get a little bit more accurate. Actually, a lot more accurate, judging by these numbers. 10% buff and 15% buff at rank 14. So that is quite significant. The problem is, this is a French battleship commander. And if we go to a French battleship, let's see, let's say the Jean Bart, for example. We look at his secondaries. Well, they're 100mm secondaries. It has 24 of them. These 100mm secondaries are not going to be penning anything. I don't even think they're going to be penetrating destroyer armor. So they're essentially useless, except for starting fires. Now, it does have a couple of, actually 9 152mm secondaries, which will pen the armor of, some cruisers, destroyer armor, battleship superstructure, etc. But they have a 12-second reload time on this ship in particular, and frankly, I don't think speccing into the secondaries on the French battleships is worth it at all. There is no French battleship on which I would want to put a secondary build, so keep that in mind as you look at the commander. Now, maybe in the future, there will be a French battleship where you'd want to build it for secondaries, but as of now, there really isn't. I mean, you can try it if you want to, but I don't think you're going to find it's particularly valuable. So, Dinobot, Grimlock, whatever his name is, he's not one I'd be interested in buying either. Finally, we have Decepticon Soundwave, an Italian cruiser commander who is much like Mimbelli. Same set of skills in here. His base trait increases torpedo detectability range, which is good for the Italian cruisers since they don't have sonar, and also decreases rudder shift time, which is also good for the Italian cruisers because you could make some of them, at least the Amalfi, quite agile indeed, and that is going to help with that. So this is an interesting commander. And then his skill down here, Smoke Cannon, reduces air detectability range and increases smoke screen deployment time, meaning your rolling smokes in the Italian cruisers will last a little bit longer. Out of the 4 of these commanders, this is the only one I would consider buying, and not because his base trait is especially useful. This is not a base trait I would be applying to pretty much any of my cruiser builds because almost all of them come with sonar. The Italians are unique in that they don't, but they trade that for the smoke. So not because of the base trait, but because of this trait here. This would allow me to get the most out of the smokescreen consumables, and maybe I will try this guy out on the Italian cruisers in place of Mimbelli, who I use for the Italian cruisers currently. So this is the only one I would actually buy if I had the choice. All in all, I think this second wave of Transformer commanders is pretty underwhelming, and if you don't get any of them, then you're really not missing out on any kind of premium value. Now, as far as how do the skins look, because there may be people who are interested in the skins, we can start with the Amalfi. Obviously, that last commander, I can't even remember their names, honestly. That last commander, he is for the Amalfi. So let's take a look at the skin on the Amalfi. My rating for this would be not a fan. Honestly, yeah, I don't really like it. Maybe I'll put it on, see what I think of it, but I prefer my black camo on the Amalfi. Next up, we will go to the German aircraft carrier Parseval, which I probably will end up putting this one on there just because it's permanent and I really don't care how the CV looks. Not much better, but for some reason it turns the planes into modern day jet fighters, it looks like. This is incredibly bizarre, and I mean, if the camo itself isn't immersion breaking for you, if you're one of those World War II era, warships fans that enjoys the fact that a lot of these ships are historical, or even the fake ones that aren't historical, at least they have a historical feel to them. Well, these camos definitely break that historical feel, and the fact that it turns the Messerschmitts on the Parseval into modern-day jet fighters is, well, it's frankly bizarre, but that's what the camo looks like. Moving on to the French, I believe actually, we passed the French, didn't we? I believe the Richelieu is the one for the new Transformers commander. Yes. All right. So, Richelieu, what do you look like? Honestly, so far this is the one I like the most, but I still think it's kind of hideous. So, yeah, I don't know. Animation of the dinosaur guy on there is kind of nice, though. He's, like, stomping around, I guess, right? Yeah, it looks pretty ferocious. Yeah, there he goes. Yeah, he's gonna roar. Interesting. All right, and then finally, the last commander we have is for British cruisers. And what cruiser is that on? Is that the Albemarle or the Edinburgh? Is it Edinburgh or Albemarle? It's Edinburgh. Hot Racer camo ski. Whoa. Well, if you ever wanted the Edinburgh to look like a little Hot Wheels racing car, then this is the camo for you. Actually, this one is slightly okay too, in my opinion. Okay, so Edinburgh and Richelieu, they look okay. Parseval and Amalfi, in my opinion, hideous. So there is my overview of the Transformers commanders for you. Make of it what you will. I hope it helped you if you want to make a decision as far as buying any of these commanders go. But again, these guys, I really don't think any of them are worth it. I don't think they're anywhere near as good as some of the other premium commanders that are in this game. So, hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.